the Resilience and Sustainability Summit has been curated, and this is a consortium effort. It is not an effort of one institution, but more than 50 institutions have joined hands, and the first session of RESSummit has been organized in 2023 in Vigyan Bhavan, which has been a great success, and the outcomes of which fed into the National Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction, and one of the key recommendations was to strengthen science policy practice interface on climate knowledge under the National Mission for Strategic Knowledge on Climate Change. Department of Science and Technology, which is the ministry made responsible under the National Action Plan on Climate Change by Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change. We are honored to have both the important ministries here, MoEFCC and DST both. And this mission is aiming at translating research knowledge into strategic knowledge. The center that has been established at IIT Roorkee Greater Noida campus, Integrated Center for Adaptation, Resilience and Sustainability, has this issue as one of the core mandate. We have support and partnership within the country and outside the country. We are honored to have our foreign guests, Dr. Lindner, who is the Managing Director of ABCD Center at Technical University of Dresden. That is one of the leading center on adaptation globally. We have with us Padma Shri Anil Gupta sir, who has been a guiding force even before the establishment of the center, and in fact in the genesis of the center also. He has been focusing that how do we multiply our efforts, how do we create multiple models, because the country is diverse, and he is also one of the guiding force. Thank you sir for gracing this occasion. GIZ, which is a leading agency on promoting climate related researches, climate related knowledge and networking. Thank you Kirtimanji for being with us. And the guidance from the institutional leadership, our director Professor K.K. Pant, he had joined online, but he has some urgent engagement. So we have our Deputy Director sir, Professor U.P. Singh sir here. So thank you everyone for being here. We are honored to have the Secretary, National Disaster Management Authority with us, Shri Manish Bhardwaj. NDMA is a co-organizer. In fact, this summit is organized by NDMA, Niti Aayog, and hosted by ICARS, IIT Roorkee. We are thankful to Shri Manish Bhardwaj and all the members of NDMA for their support. Since the parliament session is on, he had to stay in his office, and he is joining online, and he will address all of us. We are also thankful to UNDRR, United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction. Because of the ongoing geopolitical issue, he could not travel, but he has joined online and he will be addressing. So we are thankful to Dr. Sanjaya Bhatia, Director of GATI at UNDRR Incheon, which is the UN Center for Training and Capacity Building on Disaster Risk Reduction. We are thankful to all the partners who are present here. Many of them have put in their stalls. In total, we have 40 sessions, besides 5 Parisamvad. Parisamvad are especially curated sessions which are going live with global audience. This has been experiment in the previous RESSummit of 2023, and that has been greatly appreciated. Partners who are the anchoring institutions for National Adaptation Plan in the country, who are the Center of Excellence on Climate Change under Department of Science and Technology, MoEFCC and Ministry of Earth Science. They have greatly supported this endeavor. In 3 days span of Resilience and Sustainability Summit, 4 events are being organized. Today is the first event, that is on Climate Knowledge Forum. And we are going to launch the Climate Knowledge Network also under National Mission for Strategic Knowledge on Climate Change. Tomorrow there are two events. One is on regional vulnerabilities, that includes the mountain, coastal and the dryland areas vulnerability. And the second is on health and well-being, how climate change and disasters are causing newer challenges, and also the lessons of COVID. On 18th, it is the Industry and Safety Symposium. So many industries would also be joining on day 18th under the Industry and Safety Symposium, because past few years we have seen the increase and also the diversity of chemical incidents. So we are also going to discuss on the industrial challenges, besides also how industries and industrial systems should adapt to climate extremes, because their requirement of water, their requirement of energy, their requirement of safety is also under stake under the changing climate thresholds. So this summit, I am sure, is going to be successful with support of all the partnering agencies under organizing partner, technical partners and knowledge partners. The beauty of this summit is that the sessions are curated by partner institutions. They are presenting their project experiences, they are presenting their pilot exercises, experiences, case studies, so that we would be able to bring the practical insights, including success and failures both, on the forum. And that will help enrich our knowledge towards a realistic assessment and realistic understanding of gaps and requirements also. ICARS, a unique initiative of Government of India, is working closely with 12 ministries besides Niti Aayog and NDMA. MoEFCC, being the nodal ministry for climate change, is a key guiding source besides its parent ministry, Department of Science and Technology. IMD also closely collaborates with us and supports in terms of data and other things. We are also having international cooperation, and we have industry partnership also. We are looking forward that the mandates assigned to ICARS, which is the integration of knowledge from various centers of excellence on climate change, as well as the centers of excellence on disaster management in the country, as well as the state climate change cells and state disaster management authority. So this network that we are creating hopefully would be of some significant use with support of all the segments. Once again, we welcome you all in this forum, and thank you once again, all of you, for your support, contribution and guidance in making this initiative on a journey towards success. I also once again extend my sincere thanks to all the dignitaries on dais. Thank you very much.
Whose many students have got Jati Award in the past, from IIT Roorkee also and from IIT Delhi. Nisha, you remember that meeting? I don't know, but it's wonderful of you. Anil, Pritiman, Dr. Andre, and Manish, who joined online. Dr. Drall, and friends. My first point that I want to share with you is that societies which adapt also innovate. Without innovation, you cannot adapt. But innovations are not only in technology, but also in institutions. And one of the first fulcrum of adaptation is foresight. So I'll tell you a small story, 2000-year-old story of Lord Buddha. He asked a student of his to bring a glass of water. So the student went and brought a glass of water. He took the water, gave the glass back. The student went back and kept it in the kitchen. He called him back. He said, "Tell me, what did you do? Sir, you asked me for bringing a glass of water. I brought it, you took it, I kept it back. No. Tell me, what did you do?" And he kept on repeating. After a while, that student realized. And that is where lies the wisdom of the teacher. He said, "Sir, you asked me to bring a glass of water." He took the water. While going back to the kitchen, I threw 2 drops of water on the ground, and he got his Zen. Now imagine 2000 years ago, there was no shortage of water. For next 1900 years, there was not going to be any shortage of water. And why is this teacher telling that even the drop of water must not be thrown on the ground, but in a plant or somewhere where it can be used? This is the foresight. What does it mean? That we cannot develop a resilient system for climate adaptation and risk reduction when problems occur or after the problems occur. We have to have foresight for next 2000 years. And this challenge, Nisha, is that we will have to develop capacity to learn from the elders who have lived through the hard times very frugally. When I was a child and we came from the market, bringing something, at that time there were no envelopes. The shopkeeper would have a piece of paper. There was a roll of thread hanging on the roof. He will keep the things in the newspaper piece, wrap it, and tie it with a thread. When we came back, my grandfather would say, now put this thread on the nail and spread the piece of paper under the bed. Next time we have to give something to someone, we will use that piece of paper and that piece of thread. Even 1 meter of thread was not wasted. That was our culture. So we have to remember now, there are 14,000 students in IIT Roorkee. And I am going to appeal Dr. Singh, that if they can spend 1 or 2 weeks in immersive learning, in Uttarakhand, for example, hill areas, because Himalaya is one of the very important areas for us, or in the regions around this place where there are a lot of industries and they need. So we need to document. We need to document adaptive strategies and upload on the portal so that the students around the country get motivated and complement that, so that we can use an AI tool and generate as to if this, then that. And if this is the situation, what are our people doing? Can we improve it? That is where the science and technology will come in. That brings me to the next step, from foresight to fortitude. Fortitude is about positive deviance. You differ from what is going on. And there was an award that we gave to an innovator from Motihari, Champaran, Saidullah Saab, who designed an amphibious bicycle. Now, when you have flood, you don't have enough people and not enough manpower and resources to take boat to every marooned house to deliver milk for the children or medicines for the people. A cycle which will work on the road, walk on the road and as well as in the water is what you need. But we couldn't diffuse that cycle. Every panchayat, every fire brigade station should have had that cycle in the areas where floods are frequently held, because it's such a low-cost solution. So therefore, we need to bring innovations. But innovations also deep tech. So for example, coral reef, as you all know, are being eroded. But they teach us a very important lesson. So what have people done now? And Dr. Singh mentioned that their campus is 177-year-old. Obviously, we need to learn how did they build those buildings which stand today without a fissure. But if there are fissures, then what people have tried to do is to look at the microorganisms which will trigger calcium calcite mixed in the cement into calcium carbonate and fix the fissures of 0.8 millimeter, which means that you have systems which can heal themselves in the event of small fissures, in the event of the earthquake. So we need to have both deep tech and grassroots innovations for generating resilience, and this is an area where DST should take lead as to how can we sponsor and support research which will generate what I call as autopoietic model. Autopoietic is self-generating, self-healing, self-governed systems of innovation, where we do not have to necessarily have external inputs into that system. So we need to imagine a knife which becomes sharper every time you cut fruits or vegetables. That is an autopoietic knife which learns to improve itself as it is used. So we need to create more and more systems, both institutionally. That means the disaster reduction program at district level should continue to experiment and innovate and learn, and so also at the national level. The third aspect, from foresight to fortitude, I will go to the faith. And you mentioned very rightly that extreme events are increasing. When extreme events are increasing, how do we learn? So when there was a tsunami, you know one community where there was not a single death, which was Jarawa in Andaman. They saw the stillness in the sea, water, ocean, and saw that something is going to happen. And they went to the higher altitude immediately after seeing the stillness in the water. But water was not showing waves about few hours before the tsunami. And that was enough for them to go to the higher altitude, and not one Jarawa tribal died during the tsunami. So what I'm trying to say that we need to develop understanding of the ecological indicators, socio-ecological indicators that our society has evolved over tens of thousands of years to deal with the extreme events. And they have had many such events, but not as frequently as we have now, but they had such events in the past. So how do we harness the memory bank of the communities which have dealt with such problem? The fourth dimension that I would like to bring out is indicators that can help us, that have helped us in the past in maintaining the limits of the ecosystems within which system can be resilient. Resilience is bound by the range. No system can be resilient beyond a range, isn't it? Now, when rhododendron flowers, that gives an indication to the yak herders to move up, because cattle herders are going to come from the below to the above level. So yak moves down, cattle moves up, but they must vacate the pastures 1 month in advance. And rhododendrons flowering gives that time for pastures to regrow. Now, such indicators, without Wi-Fi, without walkie-talkie, they are able to coordinate their action across altitudes in the Himalayan region and maintain the resilience of the pastures. So this kind of knowledge, with all the tools of AI that you have, you cannot produce. You have to get this knowledge documented, understood, and then we will increase the resilience so that we continue to discover indicators which tell us in advance of the problem that are likely to occur. In climate fluctuations, we know that when ants take their eggs to the higher altitude, in 24 to 36 hours, rains are going to come. And the height to which they take their eggs, it indicates how much rain is going to be there, so that the ants have learned to save their eggs for posterity. Now, what I'm trying to say that this is the data which we don't have very much in our database, but we should have. And that brings me to the next issue. How do we bring a culture where material intensity of our solutions goes down and knowledge intensity goes up? That is what sustainability is all about. Because materials create entropy. And entropy is what we are trying to deal with, reduce in our ecosystem resilience. So we have to therefore increase knowledge intensity. And that will require distributed, decentralized, and diversified databases. So we have, for example, at gyan.org/databases, all our databases are open access. 1 million abundant US patents are available to all of you. Use them and blend them with whatever you wish to do. Similarly, 200,000 engineering projects by 600,000 students of IITs and other institutions are available at techpedia.in. I think the culture of open data, though government has a policy, but we have not moved very much forward, that all the funded projects from DST and other MoEF must be obliged to share their data in public domain, because that is the minimum obligation they have to the society. And once the data is available, we can develop good tools now with AI and RAG to maintain less speculative analysis by the tools that we have. But they will require guardrails, they will require training, and that training will require databases. So from SLM to LLM, we have to move in a very guarded manner so that we can use this data properly. Lastly, I would say that we need to develop a culture by which the local challenges are faced by local innovations which will accumulate and aggregate together for global solutions. I remember when 13th Finance Commission, Dr. Kelkar was chairman, we got a district innovation fund created. But it was discontinued. Obviously, after that, other finance commissions have not continued. But should we think of now, in the next finance commission, a fund at each district level for innovations for climate resilience and disaster reduction? Innovations for climate resilience and disaster reduction in each district, directly provided by the finance ministry, so that nobody can stop it on the way, and it is available at district level. Gujarat has a district level disaster reduction tracker, plan and tracker. You can go to the website of GSDMA and you will find that they're also trying to find out climate adaptive strategies in each district level. And I think we have to go below the block level and the village level where this capacity has to be built to deal with it. Within the 24 hours of the disaster, it is your next door neighbor who comes to rescue. In 2001, we saw that when there was a major earthquake. 11,000 people died in Rapar and 20,000 people total died in Kutch. At that moment, the tools, the hand tools, or whatever other tools are available within the distance of 10 minutes or 20 minutes are the ones which will save life. So unless we build local database of these tools, by the time JCB comes or other tools come, it is already late. And we will not be able to save too many people in the event of disaster. So can we try to make a DMIS, Disaster Management Information System, where volunteers, doctors, fire brigade people retired, and other people who are available in society volunteer to offer their support within whatever kilometer length distance that they can put. So one doctor says, I will happy to help in emergency within 10 kilometers. Somebody says, I am willing 50 kilometers. Somebody says within 100 kilometers. That is fine. That is voluntary. We cannot insist. But we need such a database to be able to be ready to deal with any disasters, man-made or natural, in real time with real resilience. So let me close by saying that there's a great deal that we can learn both from traditions and from contemporary science. We need to have a very robust program for research and innovations in the area of developing coping strategies that can be that are amenable to implementation by local communities and panchayat level, which means we have to have SOPs as simple as the people can local level see. I have walked 7,000 kilometers all over the country in every state. I saw only one school in Andaman where arrows were pointed out that if there is a disaster, where should children rush to? Not to more than one school in the entire country. Now, children are our most precious asset in a country, isn't it? So we must have in every school indicators of way out that if there is a disaster, where should children rush out? Because they may not know, and at that moment, no, you can't guide. Everybody is trying to save their lives. So please understand that there are exceptions. There are cases of positive deviance where somebody has tried to do something ahead of the time, and we need to spot such outstanding examples of creativity and innovation which help us to learn and share our knowledge. And this portal, I think, should also be able to put together such positive deviance examples from both formal sector and informal sector. Thank you so much and wish you all the best.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have something prepared here, obviously, but I will deviate a bit from the things that were just said. For example, about data. There was a saying maybe 2 decades ago already that data is the new oil. I would change this nowadays, obviously, a little bit. The data is the new soil, and we need to really build on this and grow things on this. So I think this was maybe a better introduction than the one I have planned. And then also the words said by the secretary and the deputy secretary here on ecosystems and their importance. I used to be a biologist before I became more into university management and international partnerships, but this topic, biodiversity, is still very, very close to my heart. And maybe I ask a quick question. Maybe somebody of you can estimate. What do you think how many species we lose on a daily basis on this planet? Any idea? Any number? Who wants to try? I have no prize, so maybe the motivation is not there, but it's 150 species a day, more or less. So you can count how many species we lost during this session already, and most of those species we have never known, because we do not know the systems we all depend on, and this is costly. There were examples from India shown here. I can tell you one number from Germany. The Federal Environment Agency made an estimation, like all the accumulated environmental costs who will come up on society. Maybe not immediately, but they will come. There are now in Germany approximately 250 billion euros annually. If you would build this into the calculation of GDP, which is not the case, but if you would do that, we would have a negative growth of 6% every year. So we should rethink how to measure also economic growth. So it's obviously a great honor for me to join you today at this summit. and on behalf of Dresden University of Technology and also the Global Water and Climate Adaptation Center, or short ABCD Center. And this is for the cities, the starting letters of the cities of universities who are partners in this effort, which is Aachen for the RWTH Aachen University in Germany as well, B for Bangkok in Chennai with the Asian Institute of Technology, C for Chennai in India, IIT Madras, I see one colleague right there, and Dresden obviously with TUD, but also with an institute of the United Nations University, Flores, which is also a partner in this endeavor. And I want to start my remaining words with first thanking IIT Roorkee and especially ICARS with Professor Gupta and his team and all the organizers of this summit and all partner institutions for the invitation. TU Dresden, for being recognized in this setting, is both a privilege and a strong signal of the growing depth of Indo-German cooperation. It's especially meaningful in the light also of the recent visit of our German Chancellor to India, which once again underlined the strategic importance of this relationship. As mentioned several times before, climate change is no longer a distant environmental concern. It is already reshaping the systems on which our societies depend, and it's nowhere more visible than in water. We see it also in Germany, in floods and droughts, groundwater stress, contamination, pressure on infrastructure, rising competition over scarce resources. Water is where climate risk becomes immediate, practical, and also political. This is why resilience must become more than a reactive concept. It must become a design principle. If we are serious about this, then we must build it into the way we plan, the way we govern, we finance, and the way we educate, also in higher education institutions. We need systems that are able to cope first with immediate shocks, obviously, but also we need to strengthen existing infrastructure and practices step by step to improve them. And where necessary, we need the courage to transform models, governance models, business as usual models, to change them altogether. But these three dimensions belong together. We need coping capacity to respond to immediate disruptions. We need incremental adaptation to upgrade infrastructure, improve planning, and strengthen existing systems. And we urgently need transformational adaptation, where institutions, mandates, decision-making structures are redesigned to reflect the realities we already see in a changing climate. Real resilience emerges only when these three levels reinforce one another. This also means, also mentioned before, breaking of silos. Water, for example, cannot be considered separately from food, energy, biodiversity, and so on. And climate adaptation requires integrated thinking, because the risks themselves are interconnected. And the same applies also, because it's very, very important nowadays, to digital transformation as well. Data systems, satellite monitoring, predictive tools, and AI can significantly improve resilience, but only if they are linked to effective institutions, inclusive governance, and practical implementation. This is where, in my opinion, higher education institutions have a special responsibility. Universities are not only places where knowledge is generated, they are places where knowledge can be translated into policy, where future decision makers are trained, and where science, government, and society can be brought into meaningful dialogue. At TUD, we expressed this through our fairly renewed claim or motto, TUD, the collaborative university. We are inventive, transformative, and engaged. And for me, this fits quite well also to the RESSummit here. Inventive, because resilience requires innovation in engineering, governance, and cooperation. Transformative, because incremental repair alone will not always be enough. Engaged, because universities must be active partners in society and not distant observers. This spirit is also reflected in the work of the ABCD Center. This center has become, in the last 5 years, a groundbreaking platform for international cooperation in water security and climate adaptation, and especially also for Indo-German cooperation. And what makes it so valuable, it's the connection of research, education, and practice. It creates joint structures, joint learning, and shared problem solving across institutions, and even more important, across borders. That today matters because climate resilience cannot be built by isolated actors. It requires long-term partnerships and trust-based cooperation. And let me come to the end, almost, with one example from this center. It's an important example because it's the first real Indo-German joint master program on water security and global change. This initiative shows how cooperation can directly shape capacity building and places students at the interface already during their studies in science, policy and implementation, exactly where resilient futures will be decided. And I'm happy to announce that now 2 weeks ago, although this program is only came into place in 2024, we have already been recognized and be awarded by the IAHR UNESCO label for water training and education, recognizing the excellence for future professionals in the water sector. And let me also stress the role of the United Nations. We also had colleagues here from respective institutions, also the United Nations University, where one institute is also co-organizing the summit. United Nations University brings an essential multilateral perspective. And the joint UNU Hub on Climate Resilience and Sustainable Technologies, or short CREST, established by TU Dresden and UNU with the Institute Flores, is an important step forward because it creates another platform on which climate resilience and sustainable technologies can be approached through engineering, obviously, but also through environmental science, socioeconomic analysis together. So my closing message for the coming days are simple. Let us understand resilience not as an emergency management alone, but as a framework for long-term design. Let us move from fragmented reactions to integrated adaptation, and let us embed climate resilience into environmental governance, into institutions and into education. TU Dresden is really honored to contribute to this shared effort, and we look forward to deepening the cooperation in the years ahead. And with that, I thank you very much.
Chief guest of this function, Padma Shri Anil Gupta ji, other distinguished guests sitting on dais, guests sitting in halls, I welcome you all for this RESSummit 2026 at our Greater Noida campus. In fact, our director, Professor K.K. Pant, was supposed to come here, but due to some other urgent work, he could not come. So on his behalf, also I welcome you all for this RESSummit. IIT Roorkee is 177-year-old institutions. And IIT Roorkee has been a pioneering research and development institute in the country, as I told, since last 177 years. The institute has always promoted, or you can say the institute has always believed in the potential of science and technology to bring socio-economic development in the country and globally. To enhance the, as Professor Gupta said, that some industries partner has also joined this. So to enhance the industries academia interaction, IIT Roorkee continuously promotes participation in corporate conclaves and research collaboration with corporate and generate opportunity for students in different forms. In persuasion of the regular academic activity and R&D activities, the IIT Roorkee have several new centers for the research, namely Center for Sustainable Energy, International Center of Excellence for Dams, Indian Knowledge System, Center for Sustainable Rural Development, Center for Drone Research, ISRO IITR Space Technologies Cell, DRDO, Industries Academia Center for Excellence and Center for Railway Research. And the center, the ICARS Center is also the part of that activities. Recently, we have opened the school, besides Mehta Family School for Artificial Intelligence and Data Science. So what I mean to say, you can see the variety of research and variety of expertise present in IIT Roorkee. And I request all the academic partner who have joined this RESSummit 2026, you can take the advantage of the expertise present in IIT Roorkee in different fields. As far as this summit is concerned, Professor Anil Gupta has told about the importance of this summit, and the important things that this summit will focus on the capacity and formulation of the policy for the climate change. Not only the climate change, I think we should say in total disasters, about the disasters in different fields. And this summit will continue for 3 days. Different experts, scientists, people from industries will discuss these things, and as per Professor Gupta, there is no concrete policy for the climate change or for the disasters in the country. So I have a strong belief that the discussion of 3 days will come with in the form of very good policy which will help the governments to implement and will help the countries to take the action in that directions. So with this remark, I thank Professor Gupta for giving me opportunity to address this gathering and wish a fruitful discussion for these 3 days. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Will focus on capacities and public policy, which has been organized today by ICARS, IIT Roorkee, along with various central agencies and international organizations. I first of all thank you, Dr. Gupta, for inviting me here and for organizing this 3-day summit for brainstorming on this very important issue. I'll make a brief statement online. So basically, dear all distinguished dignitaries on the dais and off the dais, the representatives of the government, international organizations, academia and industry, colleagues and dear participants, a very good morning to all of you. It is a pleasure to join you this morning at the inaugural session of the RESSummit 2026, which is the Resilience and Sustainability Summit being held here at the IIT Roorkee Greater Noida campus. Today, I thank the organizers for inviting the NDMA to participate in this important dialogue on resilience, sustainability, and public policy. The theme of this summit, bringing together scientific knowledge, policy frameworks, and implementation capacity, is both timely and necessary. Across the world, disaster risks are becoming more complex. Climate change, environmental degradation, rapid urbanization, and technological risks are interacting in ways that were not anticipated even a decade ago. As a result, disaster risk management today must go beyond emergency responses. It must increasingly focus on anticipating risk, strengthening resilience, and integrating disaster risk considerations into development planning. In India, this shift has been underway for quite some time. Over the past 2 decades, the country has made significant progress in strengthening disaster preparedness and response system. Improvements in early warning, evacuation planning, and coordination among institutions have contributed to saving thousands of lives during major disasters. However, as risks evolve, our approaches must also evolve as well. Today, we are not only dealing with single hazards, but with multi hazard and cascading risk. Floods affecting urban infrastructure, heat waves interacting with public health systems, or environmental stresses influencing livelihoods and migration patterns. This is why forums such as the RES Summit are very valuable. They bring together researchers, policymakers, developmental partners, and practitioners to discuss how scientific knowledge can inform practical decision making. Looking at the agenda of the over the next few days, several themes stand out that are directly relevant to the disaster risk reduction community. One of these is the focus on climate adaptation and the challenge of translating plans into implementation. The discussions on improving results, tracking and strengthening adaptation frameworks are particularly relevant and important. For disaster management authorities, adaptation is closely linked with resilience planning, whether it is climate resilient infrastructure, improved water management, or sustainable land use. These measures play a crucial role in reducing disaster risks over the long term. Another important theme is the growing emphasis on anticipatory action and early warning systems. India has made considerable progress in strengthening early warning capabilities. Advances in meteorological forecasting, satellite based monitoring, and communication systems now allow warnings to reach communities much earlier than before. But the next step is ensuring that early warning lead to timely and effective action on the ground. This requires coordination between scientific institutions, local administration, and communities, something that events like this can help strengthen. The agenda also highlights the importance of ecosystem based approaches to resilience, including discussions on wetlands, river basins, and nature based solutions. From the perspective of disaster risk reduction, protecting ecosystems is often one of the most effective ways to reduce vulnerability. Wetland reduce flood risk, mangroves protect coastlines, and healthy watersheds help regulate water flows. Integrating such approaches into policy and planning will be increasingly important. One more area that deserves attention is the link between climate change, disasters, and public health. The discussions on health resilience, emergency preparedness, and heat related risk reflect an emerging challenge. Heat waves, for instance, are becoming a serious concern in many parts of India, affecting both public health and productivity. Strengthening preparedness for such events will require closer coordination between disaster management authorities, health systems, and local administration. I'm happy that the one of the discussion also will be involving in the growing role of technology and data-driven decision making. Advances in climate modeling, risk assessment, and digital tools are enabling governments and institutions to better understand emerging hazards and vulnerabilities. At the same time, the use of new technologies, including artificial intelligence, has the potential to significantly strengthen disaster risk analysis, forecasting, and preparedness. However, as we adopt these tools, it is equally important to ensure that technological solutions remain inclusive, ethical, and accessible, particularly for communities that are most vulnerable to disasters. Technology must ultimately serve people by improving early warning systems, strengthening preparedness, and enabling faster and more informed decision making. The engagement with industry and infrastructure safety, including issues related to chemical and industrial hazards, as India's economy continues to expand, integrating safety standards and risk management into industrial systems will remain an important priority for disaster risk governance, and our discussion on this theme also is very relevant and timely. Ladies and gentlemen, resilience is ultimately about prepared societies, informed policies, and capable institutions. No single organization can achieve this alone. It requires collaboration between government agencies, research institutions, private sector actors, and international partners. The conversations taking place over the next few days on adaptation, ecosystem, resilience, health systems, technology, and policy can contribute valuable insights towards strengthening India's disaster risk management framework. As India progresses towards a long term development vision for 2047, ensuring that our growth is resilient, sustainable, and risk informed, that will be very essential. I hope that the discussions in the summit will generate practical ideas, partnerships, and policy insights that support this objective. With these words, I wish the summit every success and look forward to the outcomes of the deliberations. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Good morning to all the ladies and gentlemen. It is my absolute pleasure to be joining this important forum amongst distinguished gathering of policymakers, researchers, and practitioners, and also the development partners that we have today. I would like to commend the organizers, especially Dr. Gupta, for leading this particular effort and bringing together all of us to talk on this very important subject that is really the need of the hour. I feel that interactions, like these on such platforms are more valuable at a time when we are facing the climate risk day in and day out. The extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, they are becoming more intense, and the impacts are being increasingly felt across different sectors of the economy, and the livelihoods and the lives of the communities are getting impacted. And this is not just in India, it is across the world, particularly in countries like India, where we have such diverse geographies and such large chunk of population who is dependent on some of the climate risk prone sectors. The impacts are very visible. This is affecting the infrastructures that we are building around. This is affecting the food security, which is, I think, the first and foremost requirement for sustenance. And the public health is getting impacted. And these impacts are particularly more on the vulnerable communities who have very limited resilient capacities. So for India, I feel that adaptation is not just environmental response to climate change. It is a fundamental need and fundamental priority for developing ourselves into a Viksit Bharat by 2047. And as we move forward, the strengthening the resilience to climate risk will be more essential in sustaining the developmental gains that we have made so far, and what is that we are going to achieve going forward. So this particular issue and the concern has been widely recognized amongst the government as well as different other sectors, whether it is private, civil society, researchers, and it is being very aggressively addressed. There are proactive steps being taken by all the stakeholders to ensure that we are able to live through and sustain and develop through the climate changes that we are experiencing. At the national level, government has put together a very strong policy architecture to be able to guide the stakeholders in particular direction. We have the National Action Plan on Climate Change as the overarching policy framework to guide climate action in some of the most vulnerable sectors of the economy. and majority of the missions under the National Action Plan on Climate Change are focusing on adaptation. So adaptation is definitely a higher priority for countries like India if we compare it with mitigation. Though mitigation is important, but to be able to sustain and live with the changes that have already happened, and also the changes that are bound to happen despite all the mitigation actions we take, adaptation will definitely be required. There are state action plans on climate change. The states are also not behind in this particular endeavor. The effort is to integrate all levels of the governance into a common cause. And despite all these national and state level initiative, the complexity and the scale of climate change is so huge that it will require a more integrated, forward looking and coordinated framework that can systematically align adaptation with developmental planning. Therefore, in this context, you all are, I think, aware that the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change is working on the National Adaptation Plan, and this plan can be out in next month or so. We are at very advanced stages of finalizing and releasing the plan. And this plan is basically aimed to provide a comprehensive national framework to strengthen resilience to climate change across different sectors and across different regions. The plan will be providing a structured approach and a very high level guidance to the stakeholders across the country to help them identify the vulnerabilities, prioritize adaptation actions, and also mobilize resources integrating climate resilience into the development policies, programs, and investment. And it also seeks to ensure that adaptation planning becomes an integral part of planning and decision making, and is not dealt as a standalone activity. And I feel that some of the key strengths of the plan that we are working lies in the fact that it emphasizes a lot on implementation, and it emphasizes a lot on integration of different levels of the governance, bringing together different stakeholders. And it emphasizes that the climate change does not need to be talked about in isolation. There are multiple sectors which are getting impacted by the climate change, and these sectors include agriculture, water, ecosystem, biodiversity, forest, health systems, and the poverty alleviation efforts and livelihoods are also getting impacted. So each of these sectors are being addressed in the plan that we are working on. And we feel that there is a need to build capacities and adaptive understanding of the adaptation needs at multiple levels. And there needs to be a stronger coordination between the national policies and local implementation. We don't need to stop at SAPCCs. We need to take these plans a level below, at the district level, at the panchayat level. So these are some of the things that we are doing through various projects with developmental partners to take adaptation to the lowest level of the governance. And MoEFCC will definitely continue to play a central role. However, I feel that the challenge that we have ahead of us cannot be achieved without the participation of everyone across the society. This discussion does not need to be limited only to the environmental and sustainability practitioners. It needs to be taken to all the sectors of the economy, specifically the financing community, who can understand the need to direct finances towards adaptation-centric responses and also climate action. I feel that this particular RESSummit has been very thoughtfully curated, where there are sessions planned on various aspects of climate adaptation and disaster risk reduction. There is a session today from plans to results. I think this is a very important session where we need to talk about how do we really translate these documents into real outcomes on the ground, because we have had enough of documents everywhere. Now it's the time to mobilize finance and have the results on ground. And for this, we will require robust institutional mechanisms at all levels. And I think institutions like IIT, ICARS can play a very important role in strengthening the capacities of the institutions that we have in place, because the intent is not to create a parallel institutional framework to implement climate action and adaptation. Rather, it needs to be integrated into the existing institutional framework that we have with us. And as I said, that finance is going to be the backbone of all the action that we are planning. So it is important that this discussion and this important cause is taken to the financing community, not just to the developmental partners, but also those who are responsible of sanctioning funds at the national level and also at the state level. So those people need to be brought into the room. Then I think is a discussion planned on ecosystem based approaches, which are very I think integral to addressing climate challenges in different sectors. They can ecosystems can play a very important role in buffering us against the impacts of climate change, and they have multiple co-benefits which I think everyone in the room understands very well. I will not go into those details. And I think one of the important gap and area of work that we need to focus on is to work on climate modeling. We need to understand how the science is really affecting the sectors of the economy, because there are a lot of variables in the predictions that we are making. So we need to strengthen our modeling capacities to be able to understand the climate risk in a more scientific and robust manner, which I think is definitely a area of work where everyone can make an effort. And without taking much of time, I would want to once again wish a great success to this particular initiative. I hope you have very rich and fruitful discussions during the next 3 days. I wish all the best to the organizing team and also the partners who have put in all the effort to bring this particular initiative to reality. Thank you once again for having me here, and it is an absolute pleasure to be in a room full of such a rich experience and knowledge. But as I said, let's take these discussions out of these small rooms and into the broader stakeholder engagement. Thank you very much.
For implementation of these actions for adaptation as well as mitigation. But the real question is, why should we do monitoring and evaluation? And the answer very simply is, if we don't actually track, which is monitoring, and if we don't understand effectiveness of actions, we really don't know where we are going, right? So it's also understanding how resources are being spent at a very base level, but also getting a sense of what is working, what is not working, and to make very quick course corrections, because one doesn't want to wait for 10 years, which is typically the implementation time period for an SAP CC, to then kind of realize that the actions and strategies are not actually working. But what we also find is a monitoring and evaluation framework is a very useful document for communication and reporting. And we know that governments need to report both internally to multiple departments, but also externally with stakeholders that they're working with, right? So essentially, it's for accountability, which is effectiveness. It's for course correction, for design and deployment, and also for learning, to get a sense of what we should be doing or what governments should be doing for, in terms of adaptive programming. So what have we been doing with GIZ is the question. So we've been working with these state governments to design a monitoring and evaluation framework, which essentially means what are indicators that we need to select, which will then help us track progress in the short, medium, and long term. We've then worked with these departments iteratively to actually finalize these frameworks and then provide some hand-holding support for them to institutionalize these frameworks, right? So it's design, it's finalization, and it's institutionalization. So a couple of sort of important points that I wanted to touch upon. When the MoEFCC requested states to put together the action plans in 2009, there were a series of principles that they requested states to keep in mind. And when we were developing these sort of M&E frameworks and indicators, etc., we said that this was a great starting point for us to actually anchor our thinking on that framework, because these are principles sort of well understood by various states as well. So the basis for the creation of the M&E framework is actually guidelines provided by the MoEFCC. And what are some of these guidelines and how did we translate them? So the first piece is what we call as collaboration, which means that we're almost semi-embedded within the department. And by the department, I mean it's the Department of Environment and Climate Change at the state level, which is a nodal department, but there are at least 18 or 20 departments that are responsible for implementation, right? So if I have an energy mission, and if you take, for example, Haryana, you've got Harida, you've got HPGCL, but when you're looking at solarization of irrigation pumps, then you have agriculture, right? So you need to work iteratively with at least a minimum of 15 plus sort of departments, right? But there are also other agencies, but they're also working groups. So I think that's the first principle, to be semi-embedded. The second principle, and this is critical, is when you go into states, you realize that there is massive amount of data which already exists. States are collecting it through their programs, their policies, and their schemes, and it becomes critical for us not to reinvent the wheel, but to use indicators that the government already is collecting data on. And this is just ease of operationalization, right? So you don't want them to go out and create a new architecture and collect more data. The third critical point is all indicators that we chose have some sort of convergence with an SDG or an NDC, because that's sort of the target that the country is going towards. But there are also sort of state-specific targets, right? So for example, Haryana might say, my over 10 years, I want to achieve 1600 megawatts of rooftop solar. Or under PM, Surya Ghar, it's 1 crore households with a rooftop. So always sort of keeping those targets in mind becomes critical. And the other very important point is we didn't want to have a long list of indicators, because the last thing that anybody wants to see is like 45 indicators on which to collect data. So the idea is to keep it short, but to keep it comprehensive. So as I said, how did we actually do this? There was this mapping exercise. And I just also want to say that the M&E framework is a pretty labor-intensive, time-intensive exercise, but it's a very enjoyable exercise. So I think the first piece is we went through the SAP-CCs of the government. We looked at multiple documents, right? At the state level, at the national level, we did a mapping. We broke down each of the strategies and actions into then indicators, and then we finalized these indicators. And at the end, of course, we created a standard operating protocol. What does this actually sort of look like, right? So what's a monitoring and evaluation framework? So for every mission, you have a strategy. So for example, let's take a strategy, increase in share of biomass, right, in thermal plants. Now this is an energy mission, and each of these strategies in the SAP-CC has a description. So let's say that the description is you combine biomass pellets with coal, right? Now the next step comes is actually identifying short-term indicators, which are outputs, intermediate indicators, and long-term indicators, and then working with the department to say, do you have data for these indicators, who's collecting that data, and how quickly is that data actually available? So for example, you might say that from a power plant at a state level, you're able to get consolidated data on whether they're actually meeting compliance, whereas for something like solarization of irrigation pumps, it's annual data which you get from the agri department, right? So it's important to create these indicators at an output, intermediate outcome, and outcome level to sort of track short, medium, and long-term outcomes. And finally, as I said, it's an enjoyable process, but it doesn't come without any challenges. I think the biggest sort of challenge that you have is you're coordinating across multiple departments, right? So as I said, the nodal department is environment and climate change, but implementation is happening with multiple departments within the same mission. Each sort of department has its own reporting system, has its own sort of data management protocols. So I think understanding that is a bit of a challenge. So therefore, standardizing data to track progress is definitely challenging. The other thing, and I think Dr. Nisha was talking about this, is that the time periods for sort of implementation, the time period to see any change is extremely long, right? And you cannot say that it's because of the action that the government has taken that we're able to see an improvement in, say, the percentage of renewable energy to the total energy mix, right? It could be because of market players, etc. The other problem that we have is we're running with no baseline data in many cases. So how do you actually track progress? Saying that I want to see a target of, say, 33% of renewable energy, but I don't know what was my percentage in 2021. So how does one track that becomes problematic. Also, I have to say that the SAPCC, the strategies are really broad, right? So let's improve climate smart, resilient agriculture. That could include anything. That I could develop like 400,000 indicators. So how does one move from general to specific is problematic. The other thing, and I think Dr. Padma will talk a little more about this, is when we come in as evaluators, we want to create a list of ideal indicators, right? So for example, a big win indicator is, has there been, for example, a reduction in GHG emissions? It's a classic mitigation indicator, right? What's the GHG emissions intensity? But what we find is that there is a lack of capacity at the state level to actually do climate modeling or to do GHG modeling. And therefore, it's important to keep in mind that you're running sometimes with proxy indicators. And I think that is an important piece as well. And finally, and I think this is something that Girdhari will kind of touch upon, is when you have multiple reporting systems, the criticality of creating sort of dashboards, right, to bring all departments together. So there's a sense of collective reporting, I think, becomes critical. And we really struggle with it in terms of the time and the resource, right? So I'll stop here and happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. And you really touched upon many important topics, which I think MoEF, you were mentioning about an MoEF, but DST was also equally working to implement these things which you said, that there should be comprehensive stakeholder consultations and there should be a need to have consultative process to finalize indicators. So I would like to tell you, later on we can have a detailed meeting as well, because from your organization there are many things which we will also take your key takeaway directly. Because at that time the consultation is the key, and then sometimes the methodology is also not known if you need to gather data. Like Kirtiman was mentioning about digital platform and need to have the knowledge system. So that requires a comprehensive data set in a standard format. So how to get that standard format? Someone has to be a nodal person in order to, first of all, make them understand. All these stakeholders understand. And our stakeholders are state. First of all, state level officials, organizations. So that's a dendritic task. And we attempted through vulnerability exercise, and you also might be doing surely, as from your this brief presentation I could gather. So my congratulations to you for doing this task, and I feel that we can also have, and not only me, there are many stakeholders, so we can be together. That is my urge to everyone who is present here, experts and organizations, that please give your suggestions if you have any, and then the purpose of this RESSummit will be really it will be more exciting if how we can do this particular task and how we can join hands. Thank you.